Mississippi State football continues to work its way through a tough SEC schedule, but a nice win at home against a top 10 team in Kentucky in a game that they ran away with in the second half. We got Daniel Black on the line from Bulldog Blitz to help us break down the Bulldogs with the game coming up at Arkansas. Daniel, how's it going?
Pretty good, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So I think what stands out first and foremost for everyone is the performance that Will Rogers put on, setting an SEC record for completion percentage in one game. So he's facing one of the top 10 or 15 defenses in the country coming into this game. And certainly the Mike Leach system lends itself to a quarterback-friendly completion percentage because of a number of short throws. But still, 36 of 39, not against Kentucky, but 36 of 39 against Air is impressive.
Exactly. I was listening to a podcast recently. I guess it was on Sunday after the game. They were giving an analogy. Apparently, State used to have a basketball coach who once ran a practice against chairs, 5 chairs, to simulate a zone defense. I'm not sure any of us could complete 36 of 39 passes against 5 chairs. It was extremely impressive. Probably Will Rogers' most impressive performance at Mississippi State. I'm not even sure if the probably is necessary. And sure, I mean, a lot of these passes are sort of short dump offs, but not all of them were. He was still throwing the ball downfield more frequently than he has in the past. He was making really accurate throws, obviously, with a 92 or 93% completion percentage, but accurate throws downfield in extremely tight spaces, some throws in double coverage and triple coverage that if it's maybe a centimeter underthrown or overthrown could have been picked off, but it was right on the money, right in the receiver's hands. Many examples of that in the game. It was nothing short of a masterclass for Mississippi State and Will Rogers. It was absolutely fantastic. It's what the air raid, quote unquote, like if that's what the air raid is going to be, then I think it's going to be some good times for Mississippi State in the future if that is the consistent display. I'm not expecting Will Rogers to get 93% completion percentage consistently, especially against some of the defense that State's going to face in the SEC. But if there's even a resemblance of that in the future, I think it should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it seems to be almost a perfect merging of quarterback, coach, and system here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. The air raid offense, and it's something that I'm not sure many State people, myself included at the beginning, was really prepared for, is that the air raid, in order to perfect, takes time, and it's a timing-based offense, and it takes reps and reps and reps and reps. There's a reason why Will Rogers, when he started games last year as a true freshman, when KJ Costello got injured, he's the youngest quarterback Mike Leach has ever started in his entire coaching career, that spans 30 plus years, including his time as an assistant. So reason for that. And, this is now, since Will Rogers didn't start all of last year, we're sort of going into officially now his second season. I believe the Kentucky game was his 14th start, his 15th appearance. So, if you are considering the number of games, if you divide those into seasons, then Will Rogers is officially now in his second season. And he has the strides he has taken from his first appearance last year at Kentucky in a game in which total between Rogers and Costello, there were 6 interceptions and 2 total points scored, to what we saw on Saturday. It's a dramatic leap. And it's what Mississippi State people have been clamoring for. It's what Mississippi State people have been waiting for. So many people who understand the air raid and have more of an understanding than most say, be patient with this offense. And so far that patience is paying off.
And Kentucky's better this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure.
As you can see there on the banner there, please join us on Patreon. I was 13-5 against the spread last week. Don't promise to do quite that well like Will Rogers. I can't necessarily keep that up every week, but 107-69 against the spread will make you some pretty good change. And we've got 20 media members that we get their selections as well. We got Daniel Black on the line from Bulldog Blitz. Please join him there covering Mississippi State football with the Dogs taking on another SEC Western Division foe this week in Arkansas. May not want to show the box score to Mike Leach on this front that they ran it 35 times against 39 passes and ran it into the end zone 3 times. I know
that's right.
The rushing attack wasn't prolific by any stretch, but they did get 3 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when a Mike Leach team scores 4 touchdowns and 3 of which are on the ground. It's pretty mind-boggling. 75% of the touchdowns were on the ground. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's something that obviously we haven't seen. We've seen glimpses of it. We saw a bit of it at the end of last year. Mississippi State ran the ball a lot more against Missouri and Tulsa, 2 wins at the end of last year, which in those 2 games, the offense was significantly better than it had been previously. I think this Mike Leach offense probably is, even though he may not want to admit it, is probably better when they try to have a little bit of balance on, both through the air and on the ground. That's why you see his assistant coaches like Lincoln Riley and Dana Holgerson and Sonny Dykes and so on and so forth. They've taken this original Mike Leach air raid concept and added some ground concepts as well, and they're having extremely prolific offenses wherever they go. And that's only 3 examples. There are more that aren't coming off. There are more examples out there. But I believe I saw a stat on Twitter, might not be accurate. I think it's the most times he's ever run the ball in a single game since 2016. And they beat like Oregon or Stanford. It was some superior opponent they ended up beating. But yeah, the most interesting thing is in his post-game press conference, he was asked about running the ball almost 50-50 as we're having almost the same number of rushing attempts as passing attempts. And his justification behind that was Kentucky was dropping 8. And when they dropped 8, we wanted to exploit that and run the ball. That's something that Mississippi State people and, people who keep up with Mike Leach have been clamoring for, is that that's what you need to do when they drop 8, just run it. You're going to get 7 or 8 yards more than likely. You're right about you look at the box score, the rushing total wasn't prolific. It was less than 100 yards. But at one point in that game, Mississippi State was averaging 7 or 8 yards per carry. It wasn't until the second half Kentucky sort of started to figure out that rushing attack. But by that point, as we have already established, Will Rogers was not throwing in completions. So the offense was moving, even if the rushing attack was getting a bit slowed down. And also by the end of the game, Mississippi State got into a bit of clock management and started running the ball a bit more for like 1 or 2 yard gains. But yeah, it's also going to be interesting about this against Arkansas this weekend, which is a team that, as Mike Leach alluded to on Monday, doesn't put a whole lot of pressure. They don't blitz a lot. They're going to drop 8 frequently. They did that all the time last year against Mississippi State. So it'll be interesting to see if that rushing total will carry over. I think we have a theme on this show so far right now about, seeing an anomaly and not expecting that to happen. I think that's the case also with the rushing total. I don't think we're going to see an almost even balance between rushing and passing with Mike Leach for every game in the future. But it'll be interesting just to see where that rushing total, where those number of attempts stand down the road this year, especially this coming week.
Well, the other anomaly came on the other side of the football, where Kentucky had forged a 6-1 record based on defense, but also running the football effectively. And that didn't happen against Mississippi State. So Mike Leach, I think, had commented this week that he's happy with the defensive progress, and it was obvious against Kentucky.
Absolutely. And that's what Mississippi State's defense that's what they make bank on, is stopping the run. I think Kentucky scored 17 points, but keep in mind, there was only 1 offensive touchdown. There was their only other touchdown was a punt return touchdown in the first quarter that, shouldn't have happened because there was a block in the back that wasn't called, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Mississippi State totally just completely dominated Kentucky up front in this game, both offensively and defensively. The offensive line had a great game. The defensive line and the front 7 had a great game. It's just a continuing trend with Mississippi State's defense this year about stopping the run. I think it was Kentucky's second lowest rushing total, and the lowest is Georgia, which is probably a generational defense. So the game plan that Zach Arnett, Mississippi State's defensive coordinators, had pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, every single game this year is, especially against quarterbacks who are sketchy through the air, like Will Levis, as that was proven on Saturday, is eliminate their run game, or at the very least slow it down and make them throw it. That was first shown against NC State and Devin Leary. They have two really good running backs that could not move the ball, and Devin Leary tried to throw the ball downfield, had open receivers, as did Kentucky on Saturday, and he couldn't get it to him. Kentucky's biggest play on Saturday, I think, was 21 yards. I believe that was in the first or second quarter. So, yeah, Mississippi State, it is an anomaly for Kentucky, but it's sort of a continuation for Mississippi State about what their defensive scheme has been. Eliminate the run, which they have been able to do for the most part successfully, and beat them through the air, make them make big plays. Some teams have been able to do that, like LSU is probably the best example. Alabama was able to do it. Memphis was able to do it to an extent, and I mean they all, even if their record doesn't show it, they still have a pretty solid offense. But with Kentucky, they just were not able to make those big plays downfield through the air, eliminate the run game, and they're pretty average at best. Maybe I still think they're a good team, but if you have a good run defense, then you have a legit shot at manhandling them, like both Georgia and Mississippi State did.
Yeah, and just to extend on that point, what Mississippi State defensively was also able to do is make again, as you're pointing out here, make Will Levis a passer. He's more effective as a runner and passer, not just a passer, and he only carried the ball 3 times, and he's looking to run a lot. So they obviously made that a point of emphasis, make him throw it. And number 2, you mentioned Wan'Dale Robinson. He had the long play of the day for UK at 21 yards, but he's the leading receiver in the SEC, and he caught it 9 times, but for only 8.8 yards per play. So they certainly wrapped him up right on the spot when he caught those passes and didn't give up run yards after the catch.
You're right, and the player who was defending him throughout the game was Mississippi State's best corner, Emmanuel Forbes, who is one of, in my opinion, at least one of the better corners in the conference, if not the country. He's very underrated, vastly underrated when looking at the grand scheme of things nationally. But he's someone who could be making bank at the next level in the future. But a part of that is also that, a part of eliminating the run is just putting pressure on Will Levis. Mississippi State does a really good job. I don't think there were any sacks in the game, but Will Levis was pressured frequently, and he was under duress constantly. And that's something that Zach Arnett loves to do. He loves to blitz. He loves to put pressure on the quarterback, and that goes hand in hand with stopping a running game. If you put constant pressure on the quarterback and blitz and, put constant pressure on the offensive line, then if you're able to succeed on those pressures and get tackles, then the run game is going to be eliminated. And if the quarterback is getting the ball off quickly, they're probably not going to be very good throws. And that's what happened on Saturday. Mississippi State's done a really good job all year of putting pressure on quarterbacks. I mentioned the LSU and Alabama games. They were able to exploit the lack of coverage downfield, get open receivers downfield. That's one of the issues about putting constant pressure on the quarterback, is that you're going to have big play opportunities downfield. But on Saturday, Will Levis just was not able to connect on those big plays. He had opportunities, and he wasn't able to connect, and that's a credit to Mississippi State's front. Not only putting pressure on Will Levis, but completely eliminating the run game and holding their receivers in check.
It would take a minor miracle for Alabama to lose 2 more games this season, so a championship's out of the mix. What can Mississippi State accomplish, and what are they playing for the rest of the year?
Momentum, and State has Tennessee State in the second to last game this year. Now, Mike Leach, God knows with Mike Leach, but I think it's safe to assume that State's going to win that game. So that puts them at 6, so that's a bowl game. So if you take Tennessee State out of the picture, you've got 3 SEC games this week at Arkansas, then at Auburn, and then obviously the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving. Auburn is better than I thought they were going to be, and Auburn has not been a very successful place for Mississippi State in the past. They lost by, I think, 28 in 2019 and then by 39 in 2017. So Beating Auburn is a tall task. Beating Arkansas is possible. State hasn't lost at Arkansas in a decade, so it's definitely a possibility for State to beat Arkansas. Ole Miss seems really banged up. I still think they're a really good team, but who knows with Matt Corral? Who knows how serious that ankle is, or whatever his injury was. Um, so that's obvious. That's all of a sudden sort of become a toss-up. I think a lot of people thought that the Egg Bowl was sort of safe to assume that State was going to lose that game, but all of a sudden, State could possibly win that game, um, especially with how banged up Ole Miss is. So State is playing for not only momentum but more wins than I think many State people expected. If State wins 3 of their last 4 coming down the stretch, that's an 8-4 team. This was a team that was picked to finish last in the West. And if State goes 2-1 in their last 3 SEC games, that's a 5-3 conference record. That's State's second winning record in the SEC in the last 22 years. And the other one was 2014 when State got up to number 1 in the country. So yeah, I mean, Mississippi State has a legit possibility of going 8-4 and having a 5-3 conference record. And the amount of momentum that the program would have. I mean, even if they win even if they go 1-2 and go 7-5, an Egg Bowl win would be absolutely massive, even if they lose to Arkansas and Auburn. But momentum and just where the program seems to be headed, I think the Kentucky win and the A&M win a couple of weeks prior was proof that the program is steadily improving. But 7 or 8 wins will have legit receipts on that claim.
I'm just going to restate that so everybody gets that. 1 SEC winning season in the last 22 years. And this is a program that is not Vanderbilt. This is a program that typically has built bowl seasons. I'm going to guess, just going to take a wild guess that in those 22 seasons, they've probably been to 13 or 14 bowl games at least.
That might be accurate because State's been to 11 straight. Then there was 2007, and then there was 2000. So you're right, 13.
Something in that range.
Really good guess.
It was a guess, but it was an educated guess. So basically, they've done that on the strength of going 3-5, 4-4 in the SEC, and winning the out-of-conference games to go 7-5, 8-4, 6-6 sometimes. So basically, winning in the SEC, let's just put it this way. Mississippi State's got a good football program. They've had generally probably in the range of a top 30 to 40 program in the country in the last 15 to 20 years. Obviously, it's had its ups and downs, but I'm speaking in generalities. So to achieve a winning record in the conference is pretty substantial. Now, there's a lot of work to do before they get there. They got to face 3 really good teams that are, I would say, legitimately 3 of the top 25 teams in the country. I don't care what the rankings say. They are. And so it's going to take some work, but it's been pretty impressive what they've put together thus far, and a nice win against Kentucky on Saturday. All right, Daniel, we appreciate you stopping by. Everybody join Daniel Black on BulldogBlitz.com. You see it right there on the banner, and we will catch you soon.
All right, Mark. Thanks for having me.